What's up, everybody? It's Dante, aka the Forensics Guy, and you are listening to the Forensic Experience, the only podcast on the internet where we get to indulge on the wisdom of the most inspiring forensics coaches and alumni in the community. I am currently sitting, this is episode number 1, and we are very, very, very honored and pleasure to have Don Crabtree today. He's the former board member from the NSDA, as well as a current speech and debate coach and teacher. How are you doing today, Mr. Crabtree?
I'm fine, thank you.
Of course, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today. So before we start, let the, maybe 2 or 3 people that don't know who you are, know who you are.
Sure. My name is Don Crabtree, and this will start my 49th year of coaching and part-time teaching. I actually retired from full-time 14 years ago.
Wow.
But still help out and go to the tournaments. It's not a lot different than when you were full-time.
It's so true.
And I still love it. So
that's awesome. What state are you in?
Missouri.
Missouri. Awesome. That's really great. Wow. That's awesome. So now that everyone should be familiar, because I'm pretty sure the other couple thousand people listening, they already know who you are. You're a legend, sir. Basically, you're my first guest, and I'm very glad to have you on. The goal I really want to set as a precedent is really to just ask you some different questions about your experience in the speech and debate community, some different opinions of yours within the speech and debate community, and just kind of give a lot of insight, hopefully, to new coaches that are entering the world of speech and debate, and hopefully some veteran coaches too. I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from each other, so I really hope that this becomes a great resource for people who are interested in speech and debate and continue to go on. I really hope that the students as well will be listening to this and be able to find a lot of value in this as well. So I actually want to start with that, kind of going towards the new coaches in the speech and debate community. So I'd love for yourself to kind of give us just a brief overview of what if I was a completely new coach, just graduated from college and finally got my first big boy job at a school where I'm going to be teaching and coaching speech and debate. How can I balance that? How can I, what things do I need to learn to become a veteran coach like yourself?
Sure. I think the first piece of advice I always give someone brand new going into this is the word you just used, and that's balance. As you well know, or anybody in this speech debate community, if you allow it to, it can consume you. And like with any activity, I don't care if it's sports or music, whatever, there has to be a balance between that activity and your own personal life, or if you have a family and you're married, those things are all very, very important. And it's very hard with that great young enthusiasm coming in sometimes to overdo. And so the first thing I'd say, definitely be sure you're equating it with health, being healthy, and a good balance between family and the activity. The second thing is, listen to the people that have been around a while. Some certainly you will take with a grain of salt. Others, I think you could be a sponge and soak up lots of great information. But at the same time, you have to kind of dissect that information and say, here's what works for me. Because what works at Park Hill High School in Missouri may not work at Leland High School in California, for example.
True.
And that doesn't mean that one way is better than the other. You just have to use what's best for you. Like, we have severe travel limitations during the year.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt our performances at nationals, but we're not allowed really to be on the quote national circuit. But having visited a lot of those national circuit events, I think they're interesting and they're good, but I haven't seen it really hurt our kids. So that works best for us.
Okay.
And then I think just again, I can't stress enough the balance. It's so crucial that it doesn't consume you. You can be a great coach, and it doesn't have to consume you.
That is very true and a great answer, because honestly, that's I'm just another reason I'm glad doing this podcast, because that's even a reminder for myself. I think I put a lot of time into the activity, and I definitely can use some balance in my life as well. My next question, I actually kind of just wanted to kind of peer with, is what got you into the world of speech and debate? Like, when did you finally fall in love with the activity and decided to dedicate your life to it?
Well, this, to me, kind of an interesting story, probably not to anyone else. But in high school, I had the opportunity my junior year to work at the hospital.
Okay.
And a lot of that was in the operating room, and I met my wife there, in fact. And I was really intrigued by the whole area of medicine in general. About my sophomore year, we had a small speech program in our high school. We were not affiliated with the, at that time, NFL. But I didn't know that, so it wasn't like the end of the world to me. But I loved the competition. I loved the idea that you kind of built a family. I love this is still one of the most important things about this activity. It gives you a place. It gives you a home, camaraderie. So I went back to my teacher and said, I think I really want to go into medicine. And she very quickly said, no, you need to be a teacher. I think it's just in your blood. And good or bad, that stuck with me. And then I chose to continue in that path.
Oh, wow. That is a very different and unique story.
Economically, probably wasn't my smartest decision, but
I think we can all agree that we're not making the best economic choices right now, deciding to go into the speech and debate world. But, it's obviously an amazing community, and it's might as well do something you love instead of
absolutely
do something you hate. I kind of wanted to, on the next question, just kind of really gauge, and I think this would be really good for some of the new people coming into the community as well, students and coaches. But what would you say is your least favorite thing right now? What do you not like about the current speech and debate community?
I don't know if there's anything that I don't like. What I don't like is philosophically when the only concept is winning, winning at all costs.
Okay.
And I don't care who you are, whether it's a professional sports team or whatever. Sometimes some of those games you're going to win, and sometimes you're going to lose, and sometimes you may feel totally like it was unfair. But, the world keeps spinning on its axis, and you need to look at these young people and say, what'd you gain from this, and how can we responsibly and in a very professional way deal with that? I worry sometimes when I overhear in lounges or different meetings, winning this, winning that, winning this, and there's so much more to it, so much more.
Wow, I very, very much agree with that. That's been kind of a mantra of mine as well. So it's really not about winning. I try to remind every single student, like, those little gold-plated trophies on your wall, they're awesome, but at some point you're going to remember the experiences and the things that actually, happened to you within the years of your participation. You'll remember
absolutely
the friends, you remember your coaches, you'll remember the love that you had while competing in the activity. So that was really great. I'm glad you said that. And now that I got to ask you that, I gotta know, what would you say is the thing that you love the most about the community?
It's kind of the direct turnaround from that, and that would be the camaraderie. I've gained so many, great friends throughout the nation that I would have never had an opportunity to know. And many of those have become lifelong, relationships. And even though some of them I don't see but once a year at the Nationals, you pick up right where you left off. And it's the best feeling in the world. I also think a lot of coaches miss the boat in not developing these relationships with people from around the country, and then you share. Gabe Brasher from Leland and I have shared material for years because I'm not going to compete in California and she's not going to compete in Missouri. So we're no threat to each other in that respect. And all it does is make everyone stronger. Or we'll give each other recommendations, and Pam McComas from Topeka is the same way. And so I think that camaraderie is incredible for coaches. Certainly great for kids too, but great for the educational side of coaching.
I think that is, that's a really good. I think it's so cool. Just in, I try to research as many of the different, speech and debate communities. There is like national organizations, but I know they all do great. But a big shout out, because I know the NSDA specifically does have schools that come from literally across the world, and it's really awesome to be at a tournament, like a national tournament, and you're competing against and with people from South Korea and China,
absolutely,
and stuff like that. It's amazing. So, what is one thing that you think people tend to misunderstand about speech and debate?
Well, part of it is so many people do not understand what we do. When we made the bold move several years ago to change the main name from NFL to NSDA, we still retain NFL for our honor society. Everyone's run into the confusion of, are you talking about football? Are you talking about criminal science investigation? Those things. Unlike a sports event where there's a big gate and there's a huge crowd for the game, that rarely happens. I mean, no one I know of in Missouri has ever had to hire a ticket taker for a tournament for observers to come in. They're very welcome, but they're not, So part of it is the message needs to get out of, what we do, what these young people can do with the voice that they've been given, and certainly things like the final round videos, the live streaming of nationals, that helps, but that's probably still going to an audience that's fairly focused because they already know who we are. They already know what it's about. And so I think sometimes we're the best kept secret, and that's not a good thing. We need to, generate more publicity or exposure to the masses, because I just don't think people realize the valuable lifelong skills these kids are demonstrating daily in every other class as well, not just in the speech or debate class.
Wow, I definitely agree with that. That's a really good answer there. And right now, I'm kind of, let me just figure out a better way to say this. So, if I was one coach or teacher in the community that impacted you, what would you say right now to them?
Well, I would say thank you. And there have been many that have certainly helped me and made me a better coach, better teacher, and overall a better person.
True. Do you think is there one that automatically popped in your head when I said that question?
Oh, there's not just one. And I'm glad to say that there are many. And that goes back to the camaraderie from my local people that I get to work with, to former students who are now coaches, two at my school, in fact.
Wow.
to nationwide. I mean, yeah, I couldn't name just one name. That would be very hard to do.
That's great. I really love and respect that answer. I think that it's cool to see that, there's kind of that quote that says, like it takes a village to raise a child or something like that.
Absolutely.
And it's really awesome that there is, for hopefully for a lot of people that if you ask them, who were their inspirations, that they can name, a ton of coaches and hopefully a ton of competing coaches as well. I think.
I think the older you get, then your list becomes longer as well.
That is true. Yeah, that is very true. Wow. That's awesome. So, okay, my last question before we end the podcast. Once again, thank you for being on here.
My pleasure.
It's kind of a weird question, so I kind of very interested to see like how answers will kind of go about this throughout the future. So if you walk into a new school, a completely new school that was built from the ground up, it is a current 9 through 12 school, high school, and the principal wants you to coach a speech and debate team, and he gives you $500 for the entire season. You have 30 kids on the team. What are you going to do about that, and how are you going to make a successful season?
Sure, and that is probably happening lots of places.
Exactly.
I think that one thing I would do is, first of all, once you got to know the kids and they felt an investment, then you get the parents invested. And that's when you go out then and do some school board entertainment or meetings. You go out to Rotaries, Optimus, those things. Then you add to that some fundraising. You're probably going to have to stay pretty local on that limited budget, but that's how you start. And with that success, whether it takes a while or comes overnight, and most of the time it will not come overnight, then you just build from there. And you build that relationship with the principal and the superintendent and the custodian and the school secretaries, all the people that make these things happen. And then I think once you have demonstrated what this can do for young people, then perhaps your budget will increase. It's not going to happen overnight. I think one thing we do, and I'm going to get some criticism for this, and it's fine, is that I love when we have kids that go to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, wherever. That's phenomenal. And we've had kids do that. But I think sometimes that's our only focus, because I have seen so many young people come in there and they found a niche. They probably would have dropped out of school. They probably would have been just an unknown item floating through space for 4 years, which is a horrible way to go through school.
True.
And it gives them a niche. It gives them a home. And I think we need to focus and shout out those kids just as much, because I'm going to be honest, the kids that go to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, whatever, probably going to go there anyway.
Yeah, true.
Now they may be far more articulate because of the activity, but there are so many other kids that bloom and blossom and end up doing incredibly well, not only competition-wise, but in life. And so I just wish sometimes our focus could be a little more balanced. Not that I ever want to forget the brilliant person that, went to Harvard and got their law degree or whatever. That's to be applauded. But there's so many other successes that I sometimes don't see celebrated quite as much as I do others. And they're just as important.
Very true. What? I think wait, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just double checking because I didn't know if it went out. So, thank you. Yeah, that was an amazing answer. So, I think that is the perfect place to kind of end the podcast and kind of go from there. So, once again, to the audience, thank you so much for listening to the first episode of the Forensics Experience. It will be available. This specific episode will be available August 4th. So make sure that you share it with other people that you know need to hear this, and people who want to be inspired within the speech and debate community. Share it, blast it everywhere. I hope that this becomes a podcast that everyone will be able to listen to and become inspired by. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Crabtree, for coming on the podcast. And thank you to the audience for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all later.